Hello again. And to continue before I was cut from the last video, I was trying to get into the subject of power because this is what our world is about and always been about. It's been about the struggle for power between individuals and between nations. This is the story of history if we look at it closely. Between the USA and Russia and China. Very intense power struggle between those three countries or whatever in that sense. And you know, on that level, I have to mention and speak about the hypocrisy of the United States. I mean, the USA, with Mr. Trump in charge, has been constantly attacking China from the minute that Mr. Trump entered into office. He has been attacking China constantly. I mean, but I say to Mr. Trump and the U.S. government, if you do not want to deal with China, why is it that a lot of your manufacturing interests have been shipped to China? Because look at the facts. Many manufacturing jobs were lost in the United States. They were shipped to China. And we know why. Like I mentioned previously, we know why they were shipped to China. Because when you can pay slave wages to human beings, well, then you will choose China. You will choose and India. So this is a very strange government than its citizens. I will take you back. I will take you back in history. I will take you back. And do you remember the era of McCarthyism, which took place in the USA uh, in the 1950s, if I'm not mistaken? I mean, I'm sure I don't really have to explain McCarthy. I think many people are nowadays aware of who McCarthy was. But Senator McCarthy began these hearings in the USA, excuse me, to root out what he called communists within the American society. He painted he painted the American society as a society which was infested with communists. Again, there were communists on every corner of the street. And with these hearings, McCarthy destroyed countless lives. And this shows you the true face of America. Even till this day, America remains a country which will not allow any other ideology to enter into the marketplace. America will not allow any other philosophy, whether it be socialism, whether it be communism, etc., to be discussed in the open. This is not allowed. Capitalism is the dominant force, it is the best force, and no discussion will be permitted of this. And I would ask you to investigate for yourself or whatever and do some reading that in the 1930s here in the USA, we had a very strong very strong socialist movement with individuals like Eugene Debs. And many people are not aware of this fact or whatever. So what we have to be honest. America is a very closed society. And I'm not saying necessarily again all the people. I never would insinuate that or whatever. But a very close society is that it will not allow an open discussion of ideas in the marketplace. And we have to again think upon this or whatever. Look at recently. I will bring up the subject of Bernie Sanders or whatever. And Bernie Sanders maybe is a good example of what I'm speaking about or whatever. Bernie Sanders presented himself as a socialist, and I still question in my mind if he was a true socialist or whatever in that sense. Bernie Sanders was no Che Guevara or whatever in that sense. He hadn't been in the trenches. A cast on the side within the ranks of the Democratic Party in the U.S. He was always cast aside. I mean, even though he had many people who followed him, he was still cast aside. The Democratic Party did all in its power to undercut him and to remove him. Why? Because of the ideology that he was advancing. He was advancing a more socialistic ideology, in a sense. He was advancing an ideology based on concern for the people, care for the people, care for the citizens. And the Democratic Party, this is not who they are about, because let's face it, kiddies, the Democratic Party, although it wants to pretend that it's so radically different from the Republican Party, the Democratic Party is just another spin of the Republican Party. I mean, the Democratic Party or whatever. I mean, come on there. I mean, it has done very little for the American population. It is no different from the Republican Party representing the interests of the rich. The Democratic Party just represents different rich interests. And this is why I come back to elections. In our elections in the USA, there are no real choices. There are no real parties. There is only one party, the party of the rich, the party of the capitalists, the party of the free market capitalists. This is the only party that exists. And no one else is allowed. No one else is allowed. The electoral system, the voting system, is a closed